Today, we're going to be going through the banking transactions module of QuickBooks Online. There's a lot of features in here that can save you a lot of time and save us a lot of time if we're doing anything in there for you on your behalf. So that's also gonna keep your expense low, and it's just gonna make everything more efficient overall. So my name's Lauren. I'm going to be going through everything for you guys. I'm a staff accountant here at Lutz. I work in our CAS sector, so that's just going to be under our accounting firm, the client advisory services. What we're going to go through today, we're going to start with a general overview of the banking transactions. I'm going to go through connecting your bank account and your credit card accounts. We're going to review and process the transactions that come through on bank feeds. I'm going to show you how to set up rules to make that coding even faster. I'll show you guys how to import receipts and kind of make expenses out of those. And then I'll go through some common errors that you can kind of be careful of. In addition to some of those benefits I mentioned earlier, I just want to also mention a couple more things that bank feeds can be helpful for. First of all, everything that clears your bank is going to come through into your QuickBooks account. So there shouldn't be any discrepancy between your bank statement and your QuickBooks file. So hopefully everything that comes out of your checking account, every charge on your credit card is already accounted for in your QuickBooks file. So that's not only going to save time, but it's going to help with any discrepancies if you're entering transactions manually, whether you do the wrong amount, anything like that. It's going to help with that stuff too. It's also going to make your bank recs a lot easier if you're going through and doing your own bank recs. Your QuickBooks file should just exactly match what's on your bank statement at that point, since it's just pulling directly from your bank. So those bank recs should theoretically be almost instantaneous if you kind of get those bank accounts set up. And then on top of everything else, just to reiterate, it's going to save time in like a few different ways, and I'll kind of go through that. So I'm going to switch over to QuickBooks to show you guys on the website how to do some stuff. So this is what QuickBooks is going to look like when you open it. I'm sure you're familiar. We're going to access bank feeds. I'm pretty sure QuickBooks automatically bookmarks bank feeds for you. So if you go over here to bookmarks, you can go down here. Also, bank transactions and bank feeds I'll kind of use interchangeably. It's all the same thing though. It's just going to be this kind of home base here. But it's probably under these bookmarks. If you don't see it there, you would access it under all apps. Here you go. And then up to accounting, and down here to bank transactions. And you can bookmark it here as well if it's not already bookmarked. So I'm going to open it up here, and this is what the screen looks like. I'm going to be showing you guys stuff mainly these two accounts, but all of these little boxes up here are going to be the bank accounts and credit card accounts that you have linked. They kind of show scrolling across the top here. I'm going to start by talking about how to link the bank account. So how to get each bank account into your QBO file. There's two different options for this. I would say the most common and the most convenient would be a direct link to your bank account. So to do that, I'm basically going to go up here, click link account, and it's going to open up this login page for your bank. So I know I'm at First National Bank, so I type in First National Bank. There's obviously a lot of different ones that come up. I'm talking about the one in Omaha, so I'm going to find this Omaha link. The other thing that might get kind of complicated, I don't see any other ones coming up for the Omaha First National, but sometimes there might be like 2 or 3 different First National Bank of Omaha links. And to know which one to click, I think it's most convenient you want to use the link that you would normally log into your bank with. So to find out which one would be right, let's say I normally log into my bank by going to Google and then I type in FNBO. I just click this one and I click this first link that I see. That's how I always log into my bank account. So if I look here, the URL is that fnbo.com. So I want to make sure that when I'm picking my bank login screen, I'm picking that fnbo.com. So I would just click that and then you would log in here the same way that you would log into your bank account for online banking. So if I normally go up here to FNBO, click login, online banking, I use those same credentials here. And that's going to allow QBO and your bank account to talk to each other. You might have to answer a couple security questions. Everything is stored obviously really securely. So you don't really have to worry about that. It's stored the same way that all of the other information in your file is stored. So typically not a security issue, I would say. If for some reason your bank account, if you're trying to log in here and your bank account is not allowing direct connect to QBO, but you want to get that set up, banks usually work with you pretty well. So if you call them and just kind of explain what you're trying to do, just tell them they're pretty familiar with the QuickBooks Connect. So if you just tell them I'm trying to set up bank transactions in my QBO account, they can usually get you set up with, it might be a different login, but they can usually get you set up with something that will work correctly. If you have any trouble with setting it up, setting up the direct connect, we can help you troubleshoot, but it's really helpful if you are the one to set it up. That way, if anything in QuickBooks gets disconnected from your bank, you will be notified and you can log back in as soon as possible. If we receive emails on client's behalf when things get disconnected, it doesn't clarify which file is disconnected, so we don't really have a way to let you know that your account is disconnected. So it's really helpful if you are the one to kind of set it up and you are kind of the admin of the bank feed. So I don't have a login to show you, but that should go smoothly from there. The other option, if you, for whatever reason, can't do direct connect or you don't want to, you can import your bank statements and they'll come through the same way that the direct connect would. So to do that, I want to make sure that I have the correct account selected up here at the top. So if I want to import something to my checking account, I'll click my checking account and then I'll go to this drop down next to link account and I'll go ahead and upload from file. And then I'm going to choose for my device. So I have my bank statement here. I'm just going to click that. You always have to import either a CSV file or a QBO file from your, there's other file options here, but I would say that CSV and QBO are the easiest file options, and you can download those on pretty much any banking website. So I would say shoot for those two. But you're gonna want to just click the proper bank statement. Select these options based on what your statement looks like. So is the first, you can kind of play around with this the first couple of times you import to get it right. But if your statement has a header or if the very first row is numbers, you'll kind of choose based on that. The statement I selected only has one column of numbers and they're positive and negative. Some columns have two for like deposits and withdrawals. So you kind of got to pick that. And then what the dates on the statement look like. So obviously for most of us, it's going to be a month, date, year with the slashes. But yeah, you kind of just got to look at your statement, choose those accordingly. And then this will just help QuickBooks identify your columns and what information is in each column. So on my statement that I'm going to upload, it goes date and then the bank memo and then the amount of the transaction. So that looks right to me. So I'm just going to hit continue. And then this is what QuickBooks was able to pull from that statement that I uploaded from that CSV file. So I can see that I have a couple Amazon charges, few deposits. If all of this, some clients have just a few transactions a month and some have tons. So it's kind of up to you if you want to go through all of these and check them at this stage, or you can check them when we categorize, which I'll show you that too. But this all looks pretty correct to me based on that statement that I pulled. So I'm going to select all of them. If you don't select any of these boxes, none of the transactions will import. So if I want to import all of them, I'm just going to click this top box, select them all, hit continue. It's going to ask me, are you sure you want to import these? I say, yeah. Okay. That was successful. Good. Okay, so we have those transactions all imported here. I also wanted to show how importing a credit card statement might be different. I'm going to do the same thing with a manual import on this credit card I selected here. So I'm going to go to credit card number 1, again to that drop down and upload from file. Same exact thing. There's fewer options with a credit card file, but you can still do that CSV or QBO file. So I would say just always shoot for those. And I'm going to pick my credit card statement here. And these questions are going to be kind of the same. Date, description, amount again. So the difference comes in here when we're kind of picking the transactions we want to import. So this Amazon purchase is going to come through when you charge your credit card, that is going to increase your credit card balance. So it's going to come through as this positive amount. But if we do that and then we import that into QBO, it's going to think that it was a positive amount on your credit card. So it's going to think that it was a payment. So basically, when you're importing credit card statements and you notice that all of your charges are positive, you can just go up here. Oh, and then we can see down here that like our online payment is negative. So if you notice that that is the case, you can go up here and reverse all values, and then it will make those charges and it will make the payments basically. So again, that's just for a credit card. So if you're importing your credit card statement, you come in here and your credit card charges are positive. You should reverse all these values to make sure that the charges are then negative and the payment is positive. Okay, and then I want to import all of those. Yes. Okay, and then they'll look the same kind of as the checking account. I'm gonna do most of the coding in our checking account, but that was just to show kind of that value reversal, because that can kind of throw things off if you don't reverse those. Okay, so I'm gonna start with just coding a plain old expense, completely regular. I'm gonna go to, we'll do this Adobe charge. So I pay for Photoshop each month, let's say. This is that charge. I'm just gonna go here, it's an expense. I'm paying Adobe, so I'm gonna select that here. And let's just say it is a general office expense. So I kind of start to type office expense. I can choose general office. If you use classes, you can do that here. If you have different store locations, you can add them here and kind of categorize each one to a certain store. And then customer, like ongoing customers and projects, maybe for construction projects and different products and services can go here. I would say a majority of clients just categorize with the vendor and the account. I would recommend using vendors as much as possible because QuickBooks will kind of start to learn your habits. And then if an Adobe bank feed comes through, QuickBooks will kind of figure out, oh, they paid Adobe and it's a general office expense. So AI will kind of help you out in that sense, as long as you use vendors and give QuickBooks as much information as you can. So I picked my expense, I picked my vendor, my expense account, picked my vendor, and then I'm just going to go ahead and post. And then we'll see that that Adobe charge isn't in bank feeds anymore. So if we go up here, it's no longer in this pending folder. We've categorized it. So that means that that transaction will show up on any like financial statements that I print. That transaction will be taken into account. So I can find that again if I go to posted. These are all the transactions that I've already categorized. And then I'll get into excluded in a second. The other thing I wanted to mention was kind of what all the information is on each of these little boxes. Obviously, this is going to be your account name up here. These are pretty generic since this is just a file I have for demonstration purposes, but This is gonna be your account name. Over here is the number of transactions that are still pending. So you can see those two numbers match. That's just gonna be, that means that there's 22 transactions basically that QuickBooks is not applying to your financial statement. So it's not part of your income statement or anything right now. They're kind of just sitting here waiting to be categorized. This is gonna be whatever your balance is according to your bank statement. It will be able to pull that from your bank as well. And then this is gonna be whatever your balance is in your QuickBooks file. This one is kind of wonky because we use this for demonstration purposes, but these two amounts still might be different pretty often, because if there are uncashed checks that you've written, that's not gonna reflect on your bank balance, but it might come through on QuickBooks if you've entered that manually. So these two numbers might be different. That's not super alarming as long as your bank recs kind of reflect accurately what is still outstanding. So the next thing I wanted to demonstrate was splitting a transaction. So for example, let's just say, so John Doe came out to my business and he did some work on some computers. He needed to fix some stuff, but then he also left some equipment that we're going to purchase from him, some computer equipment. So part of this $641 invoice that I received from John Doe, part of it is the services he performed, and part of it is that equipment that he left. So that's two different expenses on this one invoice. But we can apply that. So if we click on the transaction and we scroll down here, we can split those amounts. So this is gonna be kind of a lot of the similar information that I was showing you before. We have like our class, we have our vendor, our store if we choose to use that. So I'm gonna fill out kind of the same information. We're paying John Doe, so I'm gonna make sure we put that there. And like I said, he came in and worked on some computers, so I'm gonna choose these computer tech fees. And I'm looking down at my invoice and I see that he charged $400 for those services. So $400 of that invoice was for his work on the computers. And then he left some new keyboards behind that we're gonna buy from them. So those are just regular office supplies. So I'm gonna go here and find my office supplies expense account, and that's gonna be the remainder of the invoice. So if we scroll down here a little bit, we can see we've charged $400 already. The total amount was for $641, so it's telling me here I still have $241 left to kind of true up that amount to that original invoice. So I'm just gonna use that amount to fill in. I'm not using customers or I'm not using classes for this right now. Not really using products and services for these purposes. So all the information I need is filled out. I can see that there's no difference between what I split up and the original invoice. If there was, it would want you to kind of categorize that into another expense account, but for the most part, you're gonna want the difference on here to be 0. So I can split and post. Same thing, that John Doe payable isn't gonna be on here anymore, and it is gonna be split up into those two different expense accounts. The other thing that might happen with bank feeds, is you might notice if you're going through and categorizing all of your transactions, you might notice some duplicates. So I'm going through, these are all McDonald's, but when I go through and categorize lots of different transactions at a time, I like to sort by bank description, because then it's really easy to see if I have like a bunch of McDonald's charges or I have multiple charges from one place. It's easier to pick out duplicates, and it's easier to see if I want to set up a rule, which I'll demonstrate. But so I sorted by bank description. I'm gonna go through and categorize all these. And I noticed that there's 2 Amazon charges for $51.59. And I know that I only purchased from Amazon one time this month. So really, especially since they're on the same date, that's kind of a red flag. And I checked my bank statement, and there really should only be one $51 charge. So for whatever reason, QuickBooks duplicated on accident. So I only want one of these. So I'm gonna go over here, whichever one, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna pick this drop down. I'm gonna exclude this transaction because I don't want QuickBooks to even really acknowledge that it exists. So that excluded, it's gonna disappear from my pending tab and it's gonna go over here to excluded. So all of the transactions you exclude are gonna be saved over here. There's a lot in here, again, for demonstration purposes, but basically if I know 100%, I'm 100% sure that that charge is like, I'm not gonna wanna bring that charge back for any reason. I can go here and select it and delete it permanently, and then I won't have to worry about that duplicate causing any problems. So now we just have the one Amazon charge that matches my bank statement, and we are all good to go. And then you can just categorize this like normal. So if I ordered some notebooks, just regular office supplies to Amazon, I can just post that like. So watch out for duplicates. The other thing you can do if you did exclude something, so that one we confirmed was a duplicate, but let's say I did exclude something that I didn't mean to. Let's say I excluded this Starbucks charge and I really shouldn't have. I can go here and hit this undo button. And that will bring that transaction from excluded back over to pending so that I can categorize it like normal. So undo this 549 from Starbucks. Then it's gonna show up back over here. That one also looks like a duplicate from a previous demo, but that is how you would bring that back if it's not a duplicate. You excluded it on accident. So I kind of went through these tabs, but the pending tab is gonna be obviously where all of your transactions are that you want coded. You don't really want things like sitting in here when you're going to do a bank rec. So if my bank rec is gonna end on April 31st, there's a bunch of April transactions that aren't coded in here, so I'm gonna wanna do that before I do my bank rec. Posted is where you can find transactions that you've already categorized. So if you need to look at those again for whatever reason, you can find them there. And then again, that excluded tab is just stuff that QuickBooks is basically gonna ignore. The next thing I want to go through on our bank feed screen is going to be coding multiple transactions at once. So look here, I see I have 4 deposits that I made to the bank, and let's say 3 of these I know I just want to put to my just regular income account. I only have 1 income account. I don't really use QuickBooks to track customers, so I just want all 3 of these to just go to my income account. So I can select the 3 that I want to go there. And we have this little options bar down here, so I can edit all 3 of these transactions at once. So these are all deposits. If these are all 3 from the same customer, you can select that customer here. Otherwise, if you don't really track customers in QBO, you can just leave that blank. But I want all of these to just go to my income account, just plain old income. And then again, classes, stores, use those as you please. But if I apply and post, it's gonna do it to all 3 of those transactions. So I would just have that 1 deposit left because I put those other ones to income. So you can kind of speed things up that way too, if you know that a bunch of transactions are gonna go to the same place. So down here, we have a bunch of charges for McDonald's. Let's say I am there often. And I know that every single time I go to McDonald's, I just want it to go to the meals expense because obviously I'm always buying food at McDonald's. So to do that, this is the other reason I said I like to sort by description, because if I go through and I see, oh, wow, I'm at McDonald's a lot, it would be really fast if QuickBooks just kind of knew what to do with these so that I don't have to do it manually. So the way I like to set up rules is I click one of the transactions and I fill out all this information like normal. So I'm paying McDonald's. I want it to go to this meals and entertainment expense. So I select that, not using any classes or anything. And if I scroll down, instead of posting this one, I'm going to create a rule. So I'm going to call it McDonald's. It's for when I spend money, so money out. This, whether or not you want it to apply to all bank accounts or just one is kind of up to you. For me, like anytime I go to McDonald's, it's gonna go to that meals expense, regardless of if it's on a credit card, if it's out of a checking account, it doesn't really matter. So I would maybe pick all bank accounts for this one. But for this demonstration, we'll just leave it as this checking account that we're working in. most people are gonna use the bank memo for the rule, so I uploaded like a pretty basic statement, so this bank memo just says McDonald's, but other bank memos are usually kind of like long and wordy. You don't wanna make the bank memo too specific because then it won't catch all of the transactions that you want it to catch. So you kind of just have to look at the bank memo that comes through and kind of decide what needs to go in here so that it can pick up all the transactions you want it to. You might have to play around with that a little bit to kind of see how specific you need to make it, or how broad. I can test the rule here, so I can tell that based on these specifications that I made up here, this rule is gonna apply to all 6 of those McDonald's transactions that I had in my checking account. So that's good, that's what we want, and then we can kind of double check that information down here, it's an expense. It's gonna go to that meals and entertainment account. Our vendor is McDonald's. And down here, if you want it, once it's categorized, you can have it change the bank memo to say something else. I don't usually do anything there, I think it's just nice to still have access to what this transaction came through as. If you have an issue down the road, you can kind of go back into this transaction and see that, oh, this actually wasn't McDonald's because the original bank memo says something else. So you can kind of help troubleshoot by leaving the bank memo as it is. So I usually leave it like that. You can change it and keep the existing bank memo here, but I think it's just easier to leave the bank memo as is. This auto add feature, I wouldn't recommend doing this like the first time you make a rule. Because that basically means it's never gonna come through on that pending tab, it's just gonna go straight to categorized and you're not gonna see it at all. So it's kind of hard to double check the rule is doing what it's supposed to. So I would say for the first couple months or for a couple weeks, if you leave the auto add off, you can kind of double check what the rule is doing and make sure that it's doing things properly. And then if every time you're having to just approve the rule and you see that it's working correctly, you can kind of go back later and turn on this auto add, which I can show, but for now, I'm gonna leave it off so that I can double check that the rule is working properly. So I save that rule. And then if I go back to my bank feeds, you'll see that there's now this green rule sticker by all these McDonald's. So that's basically QuickBooks telling me, hey, you set up a rule, I'm pretty sure that rule applies to this transaction. So if I hover over this rule sticker, the rule that it's applying is the McDonald's rule, and these are all McDonald's charges. So that sounds right to me. So I'm just gonna go ahead and categorize these, and we can do that the same way we did with those deposits, where we just check all of these and we just approve because it's applying that rule. So send those off to the meal expense. So let's say a couple months have gone by, it's always applying that rule to my McDonald's charges, there's no issue at all. What I can do is go back up here, and again, this is where we found that original bank transactions button over here. Okay, so if I go down to rules, I can see all the rules that I have set up. So down here is that McDonald's one that I just set up, and I can edit it. And it's gonna be that same screen as when we set it up, and I can just go down here and turn on that auto add and save it. So then those McDonald's transactions won't even show up in this bank feed area, it'll just be in this posted, so. The nice thing is that rule sticker shows up in the categorized or posted tab too. So if you have a hunch that maybe an auto add rule is not behaving correctly, you can still go to this posted tab and see like McDonald's charge, McDonald's rule, and you can kind of make sure that it's still right there if you're not totally sure. The rules are really good for anything that's recurring. So if you pay Adobe, if that Adobe charge was recurring and it was always the same amount each month, I can set that up and I don't have to categorize that. If I make a car payment every month that's the exact same amount, I can set up a rule for that. Anything that's recurring that you might kind of just get tired of categorizing every single month and it's going to the exact same place and it's the exact same amount, those rules are really helpful for that. They can save a lot of time. I'm gonna move into matching transactions. So this is the part that might get a little bit, I would say that most of the common mistakes are with matching transactions. Because sometimes QuickBooks can get it wrong. So if you don't double check the QuickBooks is matching the correct transactions, it might not work well. So let's just say I got my MUD bill in the mail and I want to record it in QuickBooks to make sure that it gets recorded. So I'm gonna record the expense, I'm gonna pay the bill online, but I just wanna get it into QuickBooks so that I know it's recorded. So I'm paying MUD, paying my gas bill, I'm paying it out of my checking account, so I'm gonna select that checking account. And I'm paying the bill on April 23rd, 2026. Go down here, and that is obviously the utilities expense, so I'm gonna choose utilities there. And the bill I got in the mail is for $614.59, so I'm gonna type that in. And that is all the information I want there, so I'm gonna save that. There we go, it's off my mind, I know I recorded that expense, I paid the bill online, good to go. End of the month, I'm going through my bank feeds, I want to categorize my transactions, and I see down here that this MUD bill that I paid now came through on my bank statement, so it's in my bank feeds. So what QuickBooks will do is it knows that, hey, on the 23rd, you entered this as an expense manually, but now here we are, very similar date, exact same amount, same vendor. QuickBooks is saying, hey, we think that these two things are the same thing. And so I can kind of click this expense and I can review the information here. And I know that, yes, I did pay that bill online on 4/23. It must have gone through on the 29th. I see that it's the same amount. It's going to MUD. Those look like the exact same thing to me. So then I would just hit this match button. So QuickBooks is going to be able to pick up on those match transactions for you pretty often. The only thing that might make QuickBooks have a hard time with that is like if the dates are drastically different, which could happen with checks, which I'll show in a second here. If you do match something and decide, oh shoot, actually, I decided that those were not the same thing at all, I can go back into this posted and undo that match. So it tells me here, here's that same MUD bill. It tells me I matched it. I didn't need to match it, so I'm gonna do undo. And then it'll bring it back over here. So yeah, it'll bring that MUD charge back and you can categorize it like normal if you need to, if there's not actually a match for it. So on that one MUD charge before, there was just that one suggested match here. So if we go up here to this check, we can see that it's check 15988, 15988. It's for $15. That looks good. But let's say this said 15988, and then over here said a different number, but it was also for $15. So if you've written multiple checks for $15, QuickBooks might get confused on which check to match it to because you have multiple $15 checks. This time it did a good job reading the check number, which is helpful, but if this wasn't the right check number, we could click on the transaction and click this match button, and then it's going to take me to a screen with a bunch of other matching options. So this is basically going to open up any transaction from January to May to kind of help you find the right one, but I know that I'm looking for check number 15988, so I'm going to type that in here. There we go. And then it's going to pull up that check 15988. It's for $15. So this looks like the right one, so I'm going to select that and hit match. Instead of, there were a couple other $15 checks in there that it might have been, but that check number matched, so I feel good about matching those. Another thing that might happen if you're doing physical deposits to the bank, if you receive cash at all from customers and you're making deposits to the bank, I would say is when this most commonly happens. You can match one bank transaction to multiple manual transactions. So if I go to this customer deposit, I know that on the 14th I deposited $3,000, but it was two $1,500 payments that I got from two different customers. And I already entered those two $1,500 payments. So those should be showing up here to match. How would I match to this if this is showing up as 3,000, but I have two $1,500 payments that I already entered? So we can do that same thing where we go to that match category. And I'm looking here and, oh, here they are. So my $1,500 payment from Ashley and my $1,500 payment from Sally. I can select those two. Those two together will equal that 3,000. There's gonna be that same thing down here where it tells you, yes, correct amount, no difference between what you selected and what was originally on the bank transaction. And so I can match those. In terms of matching, journal entries are also an option. So if you don't use journal entries, this doesn't really apply, but if you're ever using the journal entry function and it reflects something that is going to come through on the bank statement, you can also match to those journal entries. Another thing that might come through on the bank feeds is a transfer from one account to another. So if I move money from my checking to my savings, I can record that in the bank feeds also. That's also kind of a matching thing. So if I go here and I upload my savings account statement, I just have one transaction, basically need $300 in there. Import that one. QuickBooks can also see transactions that go back and forth between those two bank accounts. Here we go. So it wants to pair this transaction. So if I click this and then hit post, it also categorized that as savings transaction. So if you have anything going between two of these accounts, as long as you pair it on one of the accounts, it will categorize it in the other account as well. I would really only use the transfer when going between one of your paired accounts to another paired account. You can technically record a transfer from one GL account to another, but it really only needs to be used between any of these accounts up here, I would say. You can also filter these transactions. So if I go here and I know that I just want to do my April bank rec for my credit card, and so I only want to categorize the April transactions right now, I can go here and kind of filter by date. And then it'll only show me the April transactions. Same thing with, you can search. So if I only want this to show me times that I've paid Amazon, I can search Amazon and then it'll only pull up Amazon transactions. So those are kind of the two main ways to filter those. The other thing about the filters, they will stick across tabs. So if I apply this date filter and I'm only looking at April on the credit card, when I go over to my checking account, it will still only be April. So these filters will stay applied as I move across the accounts until I basically reset this filter and then it'll show me everything. If I'm getting ready to do my March bank rec, let's say, and I just want to make sure that all of my March transactions are coded, I like to just go in here, put the month of March in here, and oh, I have one left that I need to categorize, so I can go ahead and do that really quick. More office supplies. So let's say I'm paying Barnes and Noble. I don't have Barnes and Noble in my vendor list yet. I can just kind of add on the fly here. So if I hit add, you really just need to fill out the company name unless you want to track all this other information. Hit save, and now I can select Barnes and Noble on my vendor list. So now I can see my March filter is applied. There's no transactions in March, so I should be good to do my bank rec. I would say that's usually what I use the date filter for. Okay, now we're gonna look at receipts. This is just another way of importing transactions, basically. So I'm gonna go here. Let's say I bought something from Nebraska Furniture Mart. I can upload, if Nebraska Furniture Mart sent me an invoice, I can upload that here and import the transaction that way. So I can upload a receipt if I have it saved out here at my Nebraska Furniture Mart invoice. So we got our invoice uploaded and it's gonna kind of show me a preview of what I uploaded over here. So I can review it and make sure that everything's correct. So I'm just gonna make this an expense. I paid Nebraska Furniture Mart. Same thing we did before. I paid for it out of my checking account, so I'm gonna choose that. And it looks like QBO read the date correctly, so the date on that invoice is 4/25, so that looks right. It looks like there was one desk on the invoice. Desk, $1,500. Looks like it read that correctly. And it applied a tax expense for $105. So if you just want to put all of this to Office Supplies, you can, but it did break it out for me, so I'm just gonna go ahead and pick office furniture for this desk, and then I can choose tax expense for this tax that it picked out, so sales tax. So I can choose my taxes and licensing expense account. And that all looks good to me. The amount matches. I put those two things out so I can save and close. So all of those invoices that I've already categorized will be under this review tab. So here is that one for that 1605 here. If you want to undo it for whatever reason, you can do that here, but otherwise you can just see that it was attached to an expense and you can click this and kind of see what you filled out. View that again if you need to. Now I paid for that out of my checking account, which we've been working in. So if I go back up here and go to checking now, it's able to match to that receipt. So I do want that to match. So I'm going to match those. And the other thing that's cool about matching to that receipt option, if I go here, I go here and then I click the expense that it made, since I matched it to that receipt, it's still gonna save that attachment in the receipt, even though it technically came from bank feeds. It's gonna like combine the two and I'm still gonna have that receipt available to look at. So that is helpful. I recommend using that receipt option for anything more than $2,500 that you buy. So if you're buying big pieces of equipment or big pieces of furniture, anything that you would capitalize as an asset, if we're doing any work for you on a regular basis, we're probably going to ask you for that invoice at some point anyway, just to kind of make sure that everything is looking correct. So if when you're categorizing these receipts, if you just go ahead and upload it right away, we will be able to see that on our end, and then we won't have to ask you for as much. So that can be really nice for clients not having to send as much stuff back. Okay, that is pretty much everything I wanted to demonstrate in the bank feeds. I'm gonna go through some common errors that people usually make, and hopefully I can kind of help you avoid those. So first one is coding to the wrong account. There's an easy way to fix this that I will show you. I'm just going to run through these common mistakes really quick and then I'll show you how to fix them. So you might code something to the wrong account from bank feeds. I'll show you how to fix that. If you match to the wrong transaction, we kind of went over that. You just go to that posted tab and unmatch it, and you can do what you need to do from there. Rules being applied incorrectly. That's kind of what I mentioned earlier about not doing auto add on those rules and making sure that QuickBooks is applying them correctly before you add them so that this mistake can be avoided. Double adding an expense through receipts. This one is kind of tricky because like I showed you, I imported the bank feeds transaction and that Nebraska Furniture Mart charge was still pending. And then I added my receipt and then I was able to go back and match those. If I would have categorized that Nebraska Furniture Mart transaction in the bank feeds and then added my receipt, it wouldn't have matched. There would have been no way for it to match. So then that amount would have been duplicated. And we wouldn't really know until we went into that expense account to find it. So just be careful with that. I would say just upload any receipts you want to for the month before you go through and categorize any of those transactions. And then in QuickBooks Online in general, there's an opening balance equity account that when you're importing a bank account, it might create an account balance. But we are going to want to get rid of that balance. I can show you that. QBO does not talk to your bank. So when something happens at your bank, it's going to communicate to QBO. It's going to show up on the bank feeds. But if you move money in QBO from your checking account to your savings account, that's not going to reflect at your bank. So it's not like a two-way thing. It's just QBO pulling information from your bank. So you'll still have to make that bank transfer normally if you want that to actually go through. If your bank connection gets disconnected, like I said, you'll get an email about that. You'll just log back into QBO and log back into the bank account the way you did the first time. That happens pretty often. It's usually not an issue. Okay, I'm gonna go back to QBO and kind of show you some fixes really quick. So let's say here, my checking account, I'm in my pending transactions. I paid this law firm for something. I'm just gonna skip the vendor for now, but let's say I'm going to code this and I accidentally click insurance and then I post it. And I say, oh no, that was not supposed to be insurance. So I can go here and find that charge in posted and then I can just change that account kind of on the fly right here. So that was actually supposed to go to professional fees. So I'm gonna pick professional services instead, and then that's correct now. So that's fixed. And then same, like I said before, to unmatch a transaction, just again, in this posted, find that matched transaction, hit undo, it'll undo it. If a rule is applied incorrectly, let's just say if this McDonald's one came through and let's say this rule is wrong, I don't have to use the rule. I can just go in here and categorize it correctly. But if I do post it and it applies the rule, it's the same kind of thing as before. You can either change it right here, fix the account if you want, or you can just undo it, do it from the pending stage again. That one's kind of up to you. For that opening balance equity account, that one I would recommend reaching out to us via our QuickBooks support pool, which I'll mention. Deleting things can be risky, so I would say if you're looking at your balance sheet and you have an account down here in your equity section that says opening balance equity like this, you can either reach out to your usual Lutz contact or ask for help via the QuickBooks support pool. And we can kind of get to the bottom of why that balance is there and if it should be fixed. But connecting a bank account can usually cause that issue. So I would say any other time, you're probably not going to run into that problem. So that's why I wanted to mention it here. Other than that, that's all I had to show. So if you do have any additional questions, we do have this QuickBooks support pool that we monitor regularly. You can just send your question to this email and we'll have someone on our advisory team look it over and reach back out to you. Other than that, I think that's all I had to share today. So thanks so much.